Okay, I'll start our class by just welcoming all of you guys officially to Wat Tung, Sawadee Kap. Welcome to Wat Tung. This is what we call our Pali Canon and English study group, where we study the words of the Buddha. We have various programs here and various courses and retreats, and you can learn here at the temple or you can learn online as well. This particular program called the Pali Canon and English study group is usually a program that students kind of move into after they already establish a really good foundation for the teachings of the Buddha. Where people typically will start is on our Sunday and Wednesday classes, which is what we call our group learning program. This is where we use the volume 1 of this book series that we have over there on the bookshelf. And volume 1 is titled Developing a Life Practice, the Path That Leads to Enlightenment. It's part of the book series, The Words of the Buddha, The Path to Enlightenment, Revealing the Hidden. And what we do is we use the words of the Buddha to help you understand what he taught, so that then you can practice it. The teachings of the Buddha are very unique. It's not about believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning his teachings, you're reflecting on those to independently verify them, that they're true, and then you practice them in order to transform your mind. Essentially, what the Buddha did is he discovered these, he discovered these pollutions in the mind, and then he explained how to practice teachings in order to uproot those pollutions and get them out of the mind. And when you do so, the mind moves to this enlightened mental state, where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It no longer experiences feelings such as anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, boredom, loneliness, stress, anxiety, shyness, resentment, jealousy. All of these discontent feelings and others are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. You don't even have the slightest bad mood anymore. Your mind's always in a good mood. The mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently for the rest of this life. So this mental state, it's not something that you believe, and you hope something good happens at some point when you die. You're learning now, you're reflecting now to independently verify the teachings, and you're practicing them now, so that then you experience the results now. You know, in situations where you were once angry or sad or frustrated, and as you train your mind with the teachings of the Buddha, you can see that your mind is gradually improving, that those same situations you don't get angry anymore, or those same situations you don't have sadness or fear or guilt or shame or these other discontent feelings. So this Pali Canon and English study group, what we do is we use these other volumes of the book series, volumes 2 through 13, and we go by volume, and we study 10 chapters per class. And there's some students who oftentimes will attend this class that have been reading the books before the class and or after the class, and then we come together and we kind of study. So what we do is we meditate first, and I kind of guide you guys in meditation. Then we switch over to seeing the actual words of the Buddha, and usually a student will volunteer to read a particular chapter, and these chapters are oftentimes just one paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs or just one page. And then after a student reads it, then I will teach about 5 minutes or so on each individual chapter, and then we open up to any questions that you guys might have on that particular chapter, and then we move on to the next one. So it's more like a study group, where the Sunday and Wednesday class is more like a traditional method of learning, where I'm kind of teaching you and helping you understand, and then open up the questions that you guys have. Maybe I'll teach some more for about 20 or 30 minutes, open up the questions you guys have, back and forth like this, and it kind of is a more traditional method of learning. But there's plenty of new students who come the first time on a Saturday and kind of see the words of the Buddha, and then they might continue in this program, or they might decide that it's best to develop their foundation first in the group learning program, or our courses and retreats. Like next week, we're doing a course Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. called Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment. It's an ideal course for somebody who is brand new and looking to understand the teachings of the Buddha and get started on the path to enlightenment, and learning and practicing in order to train their mind towards this enlightened mental state. And all of the teachings that we share, everything we share, there's no cost for anything. So whether you're learning here at the temple or you're learning with us online, you can learn in all the classes. You can get the books for free. You can get the audio books. We created these in audiobook format as well. You can get personal guidance where you meet privately, either here at the temple or online, because you'll need a certain aspect of that as part of your practice, because it's great learning in classes, but then you need to apply it to a specific situation in your life, and that's where personal guidance is really, really helpful. So I'll get you guys started with meditation today. We'll start with meditation, and then afterwards I'll open up to any questions you guys have, and then we can move into the study part of the class. So we'll start with what's called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is the primary form of meditation that the Buddha used in order to train his mind. There's other things you would need besides just meditation in order to get to enlightenment, but meditation is an important training of the mind and something that people use in order to get to this enlightened mental state. You would need to know how to meditate. You wouldn't be able to meditate your way to enlightenment, but you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without meditation either. So I'll share with you guys some basics just to get you started. Usually people are either sitting on the floor or sitting in a chair. There's actually 4 positions that the Buddha taught. He taught the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. There's 4 different positions because your body can't permanently be in just one position all the time. Usually if you're sitting on the floor like this, you usually have some cushions under your rear. Some people like to have more than one because that gets your hips up in the air and it lessens the angle at your hips, your knees, and your ankles. So if you need more than one mat, feel free to get as many as you like. We have plenty. The hands and the arms, the Buddha put his right hand over his left with his thumbs together, and he put this into his lap. And if this is comfortable, you could use this, but again, not everybody's going to find the same thing comfortable. So there's other options as well. Some people like to put their palms on their thighs or on their knees. Some people like to put their palms up. It's completely up to you, whatever feels comfortable. With your legs lightly crossed, this will help the circulation continue to flow. Some people even sit in a chair when they're meditating. So if you sit in a chair, you might just put your feet flat on the floor or cross at the ankles. The upper body should be erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. Whereas if you were slouched, the mind would have a tendency to be complacent and kind of lethargic. But if you are real rigid and uptight, the mind would have a tendency to be overactive. So you would like the upper body to be in the middle, where it's erect. This keeps the mind attentive and alert during the meditation. I'm going to start with some chanting in order to ease us into meditation. These chants, there's no rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship that the Buddha taught. He didn't teach any of that stuff. Even if you might see that going on at a Buddhist temple, the Buddha didn't actually teach those things. There is no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship in the teachings of the Buddha. These chants, they're not prayers or anything like that. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he used chanting as a way to help his students remember his teachings, because his language that he spoke in, it was an oral language. He didn't actually write anything down because they didn't have that technology in that region of the world that he was in. So all of his teachings were oral. So every 2 weeks, his students would come together and they would chant. And this was the way that they committed his teachings to memory. So he would speak like I just spoke for the last 5 minutes or so. And then his students would be able to chant that word for word for word for word. They would be able to remember exactly what he said word for word. And they would do this every 2 weeks. So the chanting during his lifetime, it was just to help them commit the teachings to memory so that by the time he died, they actually did write down the teachings after he died. So this chanting, it's not a prayer, it's not a worship or anything like this. In fact, you're welcome to join along if you like. On the table back there, we have laminated sheets with the chants, because we're going to be chanting in the Pali language, which is the original source language of the teachings of the Buddha. And you'll see the English translations on there too of what the chants actually are. And when you see these chants, if you decide to get some, feel free. You guys can get them if you like. Feel free to grab a sheet. When you see these chants, I suspect the Buddha probably didn't even create these chants during his lifetime. I suspect his students did, either during his lifetime or after his death. Because as you see, these chants are really honoring and respecting the Buddha a lot. And a Buddha doesn't walk around teaching people to bow down to him and you must respect me and you got to do this and you got to do that. That's not what a Buddha does. They've eliminated their ego. They've dissolved that. So they're not going to go around demanding for people to do things. In the teachings of the Buddha, there's not rules or commandments. That's not what the Buddha taught. He's not using guilt or shame or fear in order to convince somebody to learn his teachings. He's already gotten to this peaceful and joyful mental state of enlightenment. And what he's doing for the rest of his life, from the age of 35 until 80, for 45 years, he's just sharing with you what it took for him to get to that peaceful mental state. And for people who are interested in learning how to get to that peaceful and joyful mental state, he shared it with them. If people weren't interested and people didn't come to learn with him, then he didn't share any teachings with them. He only taught those people that had a sincere interest in learning and practicing, transforming their mind, because the path to enlightenment is to heal from what hurt you so that you never need to hurt ever again. This is what the path to enlightenment is doing this inner work so that you don't need to experience those painful feelings any longer. So we'll start with the chanting. Then I'm going to go in with some guidance and kind of guiding you in the meditation. And then there'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet and we'll be meditating together. All of us here at the temple and those of you online will just be meditating together. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And then I'll open up to questions you guys have about meditation or the teachings of the Buddha. And then we can move into learning and studying the teachings of the Buddha through the words of the Buddha. Okay? So make yourself comfortable, and if you'd like to join along in the chants, feel free. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakeva Wat Tung Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body nice and relaxed and comfortable, In the hands and arms, comfortable in the lap, on the legs, however you like. In the upper body, erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled. Just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then when you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. Just reminding you that whenever you get to your next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, establishing a nice, natural breath. And when you're ready, exhale out through the nose, just using my voice as a reminder. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Once the breath is well established, start fixating the mind on the breath. Either the sound of the breath coming into the nose, or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go. Bring the mind back to the breath. There's no need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Just wherever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. หังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเขวาพุทธังมหาเขวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเขวตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเขวโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนับโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเขวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสัคคาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, just kind of slowly ease back. So as I mentioned, this is called breathing mindfulness meditation. This is where you're training your mind to cultivate what's called mindfulness or awareness of mind. You're also cultivating concentration or focus, the ability to focus on a single object like the breath. And you're also training the mind to let go, to easily be able to let go. The goal of this meditation isn't to eliminate your thoughts. Sometimes people think based on the instruction and the guidance that it's to eliminate your thoughts, but as long as you're alive, you're going to have thoughts. You can't eliminate your thoughts. You can quiet the mind. You can still the mind for a period of time, but you're going to have thoughts. Even an enlightened being during meditation, they're going to have an occasional thought, but they're going to notice it right away, and they're going to easily be able to bring their mind back to the breath. What typically happens in the unenlightened state is there's a bombardment of thoughts. You might have had lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of thoughts. Or you might have had a thought and you indulged in it for a period of time and you followed it and followed it and followed it. And you're like, oh yeah, that's right, I'm meditating. Let me bring my mind back. So this is kind of what happens in the unenlightened state because the mind isn't yet fully trained like an enlightened being would have a mind that's fully trained where they're going to notice that their mind had a thought. And they're going to be able to easily cut it off and bring the mind back to the breath. So in meditation, you're training the mind to cut off thoughts because the primary thing that's causing the anger, the sadness, the frustration, and all of this, it's called craving, desire, attachment. This is the mental longing and strong eagerness, where the mind is chasing after something, thinking that the next new shiny object around the corner is going to cause some kind of lasting satisfaction. In the unenlightened state, we tend to think that other people are causing us to be angry, or that is annoying me, right? The mind tends to blame other people. And then because the mind is thinking that other people are causing you to be angry, you will tend to push those people away, or you will be bitter and harsh and hostile or aggressive with them, or you will put your expectations on people, trying to control them to do things your way. But this never solves the problem, because you just get irritated or annoyed or angry about something else or frustrated about something else. The true problem that's causing the mind to be discontent is inside your own mind. This is one of the pollutions that the Buddha discovered. It's these pollutions that he discovered that when you uproot them and eliminate them from the mind, you can see that your mind's becoming more peaceful and more joyful. But as long as you think that somebody else is causing you to be angry, this is what we call wrong view. This is the wrong view of true reality. You'll continue to push people out of your life, be bitter and harsh and hostile with people, and put your expectations on people. But when you understand right view, which is craving, desire, attachment is causing your mind to be discontent, and it's happening inside your own mind, when you understand what the real problem is, and you understand what the real solutions are, which you can learn, you can independently verify and see the truth for yourself of what's causing the mind to be discontent. And then you can practice teachings. The Buddha gives you tools and techniques and how to train your mind to get rid of the pollutions of mind. When you can do that and you're actually working on the real problem, this is where you'll see real results. But as long as you falsely believe that other people are causing you to be angry, you'll continue to struggle and have certain difficulties in the world, because it's not other people that are causing you to be angry, even though we might firmly believe that in the unenlightened state. When you study the teachings of the Buddha, you can see very clearly through your direct experience that it's your own mind that's causing these discontent feelings, and that's why you can eliminate them. You don't need to go around the world and train other people to do things your way. You just need to train your own mind, and by training your own mind, you can actually eliminate and liberate your mind, become free from these strong feelings that are occurring inside the mind. And meditation is one of the primary things that we're doing, among other things that the Buddha teaches, in order to train the mind to eliminate the causes and conditions that are in the mind that's causing it to experience discontent feelings. So in meditation, you're exercising the mind. It's kind of like a professional athlete. I might be a pole vaulter, and I go into the gym and I do weight training, agility training, cardiovascular training. But then when I go out into the real world to perform my sport of pole vaulting, it's completely different than what I was doing in the gym. The same thing is true about meditation. When you're in meditation, you're focusing on the breath, you're developing that awareness or that mindfulness, you're developing the focus and concentration, focusing on the breath, and then you're training the mind to easily let go. Anything that comes up in the mind, you're letting go, letting go, letting go. So that in daily life, when you go out in the real world, you have that awareness of mind, you have that concentration. And when you start seeing the anger and the frustration and the sadness or the guilt or the shame or the loneliness or the boredom or whatever it is, when you start seeing those discontent feelings arise, you can cut them off and let them go. If you've been training your mind in meditation regularly, you can cut it off and let it go. And if you do this enough between meditation and in daily life to cut these off, you can get to the point where you never experience any anger arising. As your mind is transitioning and as you're training, you'll still experience anger and frustration. You can't just snap your fingers and instantly accomplish enlightenment. This is one of the biggest myths about the Buddha's life, is people think he sat under a tree, he meditated and instantly got to enlightenment, but this isn't true. It's gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. He talks about this in his teachings, where he says, he gradually trained his mind, he gradually practiced the teachings, and he experienced this gradual progress over the course of his 6-year journey to enlightenment. So it's not a 1-month thing, it's not a 1-week thing. It's going to take you time to get to enlightenment. But gradually, slowly but surely, as you train your mind through what's called the Eightfold Path, the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching of the Buddha, that other things plug into it. He gives you these 8 individual steps or these factors that you're learning. They're kind of like little dials. If you had a sound system with speakers and you had 8 dials and you were dialing these dials in closer and closer and closer to get a better and better sound out of the speakers, the same thing is true about your mind, that as you're dialing in the Eightfold Path in your life and developing your life practice more and more, you you start getting these better quality mind. You start optimizing your mind. It starts to be focused, concentrated, having clarity of mind, deep memory. Your personal and professional relationships will blossom. You'll see the peace and the joy come into the mind. You won't even be in a bad mood anymore by the time you get to enlightenment, because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are causing that bad mood to arise. You've eliminated the pollutions of the mind. And this comes through meditation, yes, but there's other teachings that you need as well, which is why the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching. There's multiple teachings in there, and meditation is just one aspect of one step. So if you do the math, meditation is about 12% of the Eightfold Path. The other aspects of the path, you need to learn those too in order to get to this enlightened mental state. So I'm going to pause here and see if you guys have any questions about meditation or the Buddha's teachings or anything you've been seeing in the temples as you've been going around Thailand. I'll give you guys a chance to ask any and all questions that you like. If you're developing a meditation practice and you have certain questions about it, this is a great time for you to ask those. Here at the temple, all you need to do is open up the microphone in that little bowl right there. There's 2 microphones, that little white bowl right there. You just turn on the microphone, and that way the people online can hear. For those of you guys that are online, if you're in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, you can put your question in the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. Do you guys have any questions? The light should come on once you turn on the switch. You see the light on? Yeah, the light. There you go. No, it should work.
Yeah, I think it works now.
There you go.
Could you maybe tell a bit about those other steps involved in this Eightfold Path, if I catch it correctly?
Sure. So the Eightfold Path, there's 8 individual steps. It starts with what's called right view. This is where you're learning about how the mind causes itself to be discontent. You're learning what's called the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths is the first, most fundamental teaching of the Buddha that you learn. And this is where you learn, you reflect, and you practice. You can independently verify that your mind is causing its own discontentedness. You can look at your life. Once you learn the Four Noble Truths, you can look at your life in various situations in your life, and you can see like, oh my goodness, I have been causing my own anger. I have been causing my own frustration. You can see it very clearly once you learn that teaching. That's called right view. And now with right view, when you understand that your mind is causing its own discontentedness, you then move on to the other steps, which the second one is called right intention, where you have the right intentions or the right thinking or the right thoughts. And there's 3 aspects to right intention. And then we move into the moral conduct section, which is right speech, right action, and right livelihood. This is where the Buddha is teaching you the natural law of Gama, or some people call it karma, which is cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. Some people think of the natural law of Gama as like punishment and rewards, or some kind of like mystical, magical thing, or somebody kind of controlling you or something, but that's not what it is. It's actually just the results of your decisions. For example, if you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, people will tend to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to you. Whereas if you're impolite, unkind, unfriendly, and disrespectful, people will tend to be that way with you. This is a cause and effect. It's based on your choices. How do you choose to conduct yourself in the world is how you will get certain experiences coming back to you. Where when we make unwise decisions, we will experience unwholesome results. And when we make wise decisions, we'll experience wholesome results. So the moral conduct section, the Buddha is teaching you about speech, actions, and livelihood, because these are 3 ways that you can actually cause harm in the world through unwise decisions. When you don't understand the natural laws of existence that he taught, when you don't understand the natural law of karma, you will actually make unwise decisions just because you lack wisdom of the natural law. So the moral conduct section of right speech is like your communication. He gives you guidance to understand this natural law and how to speak in a way, not changing your personality or your character or anything like that, but just helping you understand some basic guidance around how we can speak in ways that isn't harmful. Same thing with our actions. We can cause harm through our bodily actions. And if we cause harm through our bodily actions, this harm is going to come back to us. And then our livelihood is how we choose to sustain our life and how we make an income. Whereas if we were sustaining our life off of harming others, this harm is going to come back to us. So the speech, actions, and livelihood is to eliminate your harmful ways of interacting through your moral conduct that would produce harm coming back to you. And then there's the mental discipline section, which is called right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. This is where he's teaching you how to train your mind with mental discipline. So the Eightfold Path is organized into 3 categories. It's called wisdom, moral conduct, and mental discipline. And then there's 8 individual steps. Right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And part of what somebody's doing is they're learning through the words of the Buddha so that you can see exactly what he taught, but then you never believe his teachings. You learn them, you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them. And then as you do, you'll develop more and more wisdom because you'll see the condition of your mind's improving, the condition of your life is improving, your relationships are blossoming, and you'll see so much more progress in your life because now you understand the natural law of Gama, this cause and effect, where like when we lacked wisdom of the natural law of gravity, we made all kinds of unwise decisions as a child. We fell down, we hit our knee, we hit our elbow, we hit our head, we knocked over glasses of water. We had all kinds of difficulties because we made unwise decisions and we experienced unwholesome results because we just lacked wisdom of this natural law of gravity. But slowly but surely, we awoke to the wisdom of the natural law of gravity. By the time we were 10 or 12, we learned to tie our shoes. We learned to, look at the surface of the sidewalk. We learned to take our time and walk a little bit slow. When we have a glass of water, instead of putting it out in front of us, we put it behind us because that's going to ensure that it doesn't get knocked over. So we learned certain things. So we fully awoke to the natural law of gravity, and now we can climb ladders, we can get on airplanes, we can ride bicycles and motorbikes and all kinds of things. Well, the natural law of Gama is the same way, that if you don't understand it, you will actually make unwise decisions, not because you're a bad person or that you've done anything wrong. It's just that you lack wisdom. You have this unknowing of true reality of this natural law. And when you make these unwise decisions in life, then you experience unwholesome results. So you will struggle. You will have difficulties. There'll be certain decisions that you're trying to make in life, and you'll just struggle and have lots of difficulties because of this lack of wisdom. But when you gain this wisdom through not believing, through learning, reflecting, and practicing, now when you have wisdom, now you don't struggle. Now you don't have difficulties. You'll have certain challenges in life. There'll be certain things that you need to address. But as you awake to this wisdom through learning, reflecting, and practicing, now your mind can be calm because you understand the world that you live in. The unenlightened mind is essentially living in a world that it doesn't understand. And it walks around, like, gosh, I don't understand. Why does my mom keep doing that? Why does dad keep doing that? I just don't understand them. Or you watch the news. I don't understand why they keep doing that. You just get confused sometimes. But by the time you awake to the natural laws of existence, you'll understand the world that you live in. And then you can be peaceful and joyful, making wise decisions because you understand these natural laws.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that was very
helpful. You're welcome. And it's the Eightfold Path that is that core central teaching that's going to help you to understand that.
And those are taught in those different books? Or?
Yeah, the very first book goes into a lot of detail about it because it's a core fundamental teaching. And then all the programs and courses that I teach, they all make that a real focal point in the course because it's so important for a student to know. So if you'd like to study either in the group learning program or in the foundation in the path to enlightenment, or if you just like to read a book or watch videos that I have recorded, you can be learning this Eightfold Path. And then you can get guidance because you're going to need guidance as you go to be able to understand this path more and more closely.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's helpful.
Yes, you're very welcome. I think there was another question. Yes?
Meditation, like 3-4 hours all day?
Yeah, so here I'd start class with a very brief meditation, kind of like, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on the class and kind of what I was saying beforehand, just as a way to get you started with meditation. You can meditate for longer periods of time if you like, and there's probably places around that you can go and meditate for those periods of time. I'm sorry, can you use the microphone? I can't hear you.
I heard about the
Wat Tung. Yes, you can go to Wat Tung. They have tunnels and they have places you can sleep. You can stay at the temple if you like, and you can learn there all day long and meditate there all day long. Any of these temples you can go into and meditate for as long as you like. But in terms of building up your practice, you only need to really meditate about 2 or 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And people usually build up to that. Usually when you first start, someone might only be meditating 5 minutes or 10 minutes or something like this. Some students, it takes 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more, because you need to make more space in your life. It's gradual training that leads to this gradual practice and gradual progress. But some people like to do really long sessions of meditation, and you can do that at any of the places around or at home or anything like that, but just don't feel like that's what you have to do or that you're required to meditate for that period of time. Because as a household practitioner, you might not be able to meditate for 4 hours or 8 hours or 10 hours consistently. But if you're on holiday like this and it's like, hey, I'd like to get a lot of meditation in, then you can surely do that, because it's kind of like an empty bucket and you're scooping water. And as long as you can scoop, you just keep scooping the water and fill up your bucket. So if you'd like to go meditate other places for a longer and longer period of time, or even at this temple, you can meditate for as long as you like. But in terms of your daily practice and what you'd like to build up to is 2 or 3 sessions per day for 30 minutes or more. That's what you'd like to gradually build up to. And it takes time to be able to build up to that. Yes, ma'am.
So in the past meditation, I got several thoughts jump into my mind about the past, like this morning how I get there, about the future, what will I do tonight, like. So I instruct myself, breathe in, breathe out, so to help myself back to the breath. Is that correct? So yeah. I keep telling myself in and out, follow your voices.
Yeah, this is very common, that the unenlightened mind, the untrained mind, it either is in the past or it's in the future. It doesn't want to be in the present moment. So that's why you're focused on the breath, and because the breath is right now. That's right now, right? So when you focus the mind on the sound or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose, this is keeping the mind in the present moment. But because the mind's untrained, during meditation, it's going to go to the future. It's going to go to the past. And what you would like to do is internally cut that off and bring the mind back to the breath. And while you're getting started like this, sometimes students need to tell the mind, let it go, let it go, let it go, or come back to the breath. You can do that as you need to, but what you would like to do is you would like to, over time, get to the point where you can just internally cut it off and let it go, and you don't need to do that. But as you get started, you're probably going to need that kind of talking to the mind. Yeah. Would you mind turning off that microphone that's in there? Yeah, I think that it just was left on. You have another question? Sure.
So before the class, we had a short talk about how you got inspired in meditation and about Thai people. Do you think that, could you maybe tell something about the extent to which people here practice Buddhism and, how these rules or steps, are involved in their lives?
Sure. So in Thailand, there was some surveys that they've done over time, and out of the 70 million people that are here in the population of Thailand, 95% consider themselves practicing Buddhist practitioners. And the other 5% are split between, Christian, Muslim, and other Hindu, things like this. So in a place like Thailand, where it's quite peaceful and people are quite joyful, you'll see that a large majority of the people are considering themselves to be Buddhist. And if they're not necessarily coming to the temple like this regularly to learn and to train and to talk to a teacher and getting help, they're at least influenced by the teachings, because the teachings are embedded in their culture. The Thai culture, if you think about a tree, the leaves of the tree are like Thai dancing and Thai food and Thai fabrics and all these kind of things. The branches and, things like this. And then the trunk of the tree is kind of like Thai culture. And then the roots of the tree is Buddhism. So even though people might not have formally learned Buddhist teachings, although some people surely do, a lot of people do, they've been so ingrained into their culture that they learn them growing up, and they learn a lot of the teachings. But there's also a lot of teachings that aren't the Buddhas that are being shared in Thailand as well, like rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship. This isn't part of the teachings of the Buddha. Some people present the teachings of the Buddha as rules, but he didn't teach any rules. He's not teaching through rules, because nobody likes to follow rules. Who enjoys following rules? You feel like constrained. You feel like, somebody's going to come punish me if I break the rule, right? He didn't teach rules, but oftentimes people are translating it that way. So they'll see a word that he used in this language that is no longer a spoken language. It's called Pali. That's the original language that the source teachings are captured in, and they're translating it today as meaning rules. But the way that you can see that he taught that it's not rules, it's guidance. He's providing you, what did it take him to get to this enlightened mental state? Because what a Buddha does is they get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They get to enlightenment and figure out how to get to this peaceful and joyful mental state without the help of any teachers or any guides. Then when they awaken to enlightenment through their own independent journey, they then share those teachings with others for the rest of their life. And countless people get to enlightenment during their life. And then the third criteria that makes a Buddha is that they preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people can get to enlightenment after they die. So he meets all three of these criteria. He got to enlightenment by himself. He dedicated the rest of his life to sharing his teachings, and countless people got to enlightenment during his life. And they know that they got to enlightenment because they know what anger and sadness feels like. And then when they weren't experiencing that any longer, they knew that their mind was enlightened, right? And then countless more people got to enlightenment after his death. So here in Thailand, they really respect the Buddha because they understand that his teachings are what helps improve their life. And without the teachings of the Buddha, they would really be lost in the world of not understanding the natural laws. But over the 2,500 years since the Buddha died, various things have kind of creeped into the teachings, which are not the teachings. And the Buddha talked about this. He said that this is what was going to occur, that his teachings would gradually diminish over time, and people at this point in history would be completely lost about what he actually taught. And then what we're doing in this particular community is we're looking to restore the teachings back into the world in the way that the Buddha taught. So we look to the original words of the Buddha as being the source teachings, where there's about 500 million people in the world that consider themselves Buddhist, but very few of them are studying with the original words of the Buddha, because the original words of the Buddha are in 45 books about this thick. And it cost a good $1,000 to $1,500 to print out the original words of the Buddha. And this is like a 3-month salary for the average Thai person. So you probably don't own any books that are worth 3 months of your salary. So the average Thai person, even the average temple, doesn't even have the original teachings of the Buddha. So what this book series does is it consolidates it into a manageable, digestible book series that we can then give away for free because of the internet. Because all through history, we couldn't give things away for free because people had to pay to print the books. Where nowadays with the internet, we can just give it to people for free as a soft copy. And then because we've consolidated it, it's not that expensive to actually print it out. It's only about $150 to print it out totally, the entire book series. So people nowadays have better access to the teachings than they have throughout history. But during the lifetime of the Buddha, it was an oral tradition, so people were able to learn it. So Buddhism has been here in Thailand for about 800 to 1200 years is when it came into Thailand. So it's really steeped into the culture, and people practice it on a regular basis. And you can see through the way that people interact that people are quite peaceful and quite joyful here. So you can see the truth for yourself that it works, versus where maybe we might have grown up, it might not be as peaceful as here in Thailand, because people aren't understanding how to conduct themselves in peaceful and harmonious ways, the way that the Buddhist teachings provide.
Right, thank you very much. And maybe a short follow-up question. Could you give a concrete example where you think that an original Buddhist practice is really embedded in the Thai culture?
Sure. So like the Eightfold Path, one of the steps there is right speech, or we might think of it as right communication, learning how to talk with others in a way that doesn't cause harm. Because if we cause harm, harm will come back to us. This is the natural law of Gotama. It's the results of our decisions, that if we choose to be harsh and bitter and aggressive and hostile with people, this harshness will come back to us. So in Thai culture, maybe the Thai people by and large haven't necessarily studied the original words of the Buddha about right speech, because he gives very detailed, specific guidance on right speech, explaining the natural law of Gotama to you about right speech. So the average Thai person may not have studied the original formal teachings, but if you're growing up as a child and you're 4 years old, 8 years old, 12 years old, and you talk to mom or dad or grandma and grandpa in a harsh or aggressive way, there's going to be somebody there that's like, no. Don't talk to grandma that way. You need to be polite. Calm down, relax, talk to grandma very nicely and respectful. And then when you're growing up, you're seeing mom and dad and brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles and cousins all talking very harmoniously with each other and very warm and gentle. So you grow up in that environment. So the teachings have really steeped into the culture, where, like when I grew up, people talked harsh and aggressive and hostile and bitter, and this is what you grow up with, and you conform to that as a human being because you see adults speaking that way, so you think that that's the way you're supposed to speak. But when you grow up in an environment where people are very loving and kind and gentle and warm and friendly and polite and respectful, as a being growing up at 1 year old, 5 years old, 10 years old, you grow up seeing this from the adults around you, and you learn that as part of your culture and the way that you function in the world. So the vast majority of Thai people probably have not ever studied the original words of the Buddha in a formal context like we usually do in this class, in this programs and all that we study. But they've learned growing up what the teachings are, and they understand Gama of cause and effect to a certain degree. And they've learned that just kind of through growing up and being around people who understand it, and then guiding them here and there throughout the villages and in their home or in their school or something like this.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very concrete example that I can recognize also.
Yeah, very good. All right, let me check online here, see if we have any questions. Jose in Zoom is asking if there's a file and can you get access to the chants? And the answer is yes. If you go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, and you go to free books, there's a big link there that says free books. I have a lot of the books. I have all the books in there, and I also have the sheet for the chants, and I have the slides for the slides that I use, and all the materials that I use for teaching. You'll see it there under free books. You just need to scroll down. And then also it's in the first book as well, but you'll see the one-page sheet for the chanting in there as well. Okay, Jose is asking some other questions. He says, does all Buddhists chant the Namo Tassa, the second chant that I chanted? The answer is no. Not all Buddhist people do any one particular thing. This would be permanence if this was the truth, if this was actually happening, where everybody did exactly the same thing. There isn't just one person at the top of Buddhism and telling everybody what they should and shouldn't be doing. That would be like rules or commandments. But instead, what you've got is you've got all these individual temples and individual teachers that are sharing resources to help you to understand what they understand about the teaching. So whoever you study with as a teacher is going to be sharing with you what they do, or this is what they should be doing, is sharing with you what they do as a practice. So I'm sharing with you what I do as a practice, which is I study the original words of the Buddha. I do everything in terms of meditation and the Eightfold Path and the chanting. All of this is coming from the original source teachings. So there isn't just one way for everybody in the world to practice any particular thing. But if you study with the original words of the Buddha, you can see what he actually taught, and then you'll know the truth for yourself of what's true and false, because as you see the condition of your mind improving, you will know that you're studying the original teachings, because like I mentioned, you know what anger and sadness and those other discontent feelings feel like. And as your mind is gradually improving, then you can see that and you'll know the truth for yourself, that it's these teachings that are leading to that. And then you have another question here as well. You're asking, what is the purpose of the prayer beads? So the Buddha never taught prayer. He didn't make prayer as part of his teachings, because he taught that it's not prayer that's going to lead to improvement in your life, where sometimes people might pray for peace, or some people might pray for wealth or happiness or something like this. But he says, and he talks about, and you can see the truth for yourself, that anything that you experience, it's based on your decisions. There's a cause and effect, or action and result. You can't just pray for more money and boom, here's your more money. Or you can't just pray for a boyfriend or a girlfriend and here it is. Or something else, or knowledge or wisdom. You need to actively work and make choices towards becoming a friendlier, kinder, more loving person. And then boyfriends, girlfriends will be interested in spending time with you. You need to gain skills and knowledge and wisdom and go apply that in the workforce. And then you'll improve your wealth and your income. If you would like peacefulness, you need to practice the way of peacefulness. This is what the Buddha shares, his words, is you need to practice the way of peacefulness if you want peacefulness. Or if you want something else, you need to practice. You need to make decisions in that regard. So there is no prayer in the teachings of the Buddha. And the beads that people use, the Buddha never taught to use these beads, but people do sometimes today. What they often are doing is they're counting with the beads. I don't suggest that anybody meditate with beads, because your mind just gets fixed and attached to it. Your mind is holding on to these beads, and then you get to the point where you can't meditate unless you have your beads with you. And you can't permanently have your beads with you. It's not possible. You might be in the remote mountains of Chiang Mai, 3 days away from society. And if your mind is hooked to a certain candle or a certain music or a phone app or beads or something else like this, you're not going to be able to meditate. You only really need 3 things to meditate: the body, the mind, and the breath. Those are the only 3 things you need, and you'll have them with you for the rest of this life. The body, the mind, and the breath. That's it. And then that way you can meditate anywhere, anytime. But if your mind gets attached to beads or candle or incense or music or a phone app or a gong or something like this, you can only meditate when you have those things with you. So as your meditation practice gets established, after about 4 to 8 weeks, you'd like to kind of start moving the mind around into different environments so that you're not using the exact same cushion, you're not having the exact same lighting and the exact same sounds. Like here at this temple, we're in the city, so you hear different sounds when you're meditating. This is actually very good for the mind. If you tried to meditate in complete silence all the time, you wouldn't be able to do that, because silence isn't permanent. It's not possible for silence to always exist and be permanent. So you're going to sometimes hear different sounds that are occurring while you're meditating. So it's actually helpful to put the mind in different situations so you can have different lighting, different sounds, different experiences, but only use the body, the mind, and the breath. And of course, if you use cushions here or there, or you need a blanket here or there, go for it. But don't have a habit of using those things always, allowing the mind to cling to it, because then you won't be able to meditate when you don't have those things. Okay, these are all the questions that I'm seeing here at the temple or online as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to our Pali Canon and English study group where we study the words of the Buddha. This, as I mentioned, it's not necessarily a traditional way of learning. This is more of a study group that students will typically move into after they already have a foundation in the path to enlightenment. But even if this is your first time coming to the temple to learn, you can still surely learn in this way. It's the words of the Buddha, they're not anything that you can't see, but it's just something that typically you kind of need to lay down a really nice foundation first in either like the group learning program or one of our courses or retreats where we're teaching the foundational programs. And as I mentioned on Monday, we've got a foundational course that's starting. It's going to be 5 days from Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And we take a nice hour-and-a-half lunch. So you guys are all invited and welcome to come learn in that program if you like. But here, what we do in the Pali Canon and English study group, it kind of fills in the framework. So if you've taken a foundational course, then you kind of fill in the framework with teachings like this that are much more detailed. In this particular book, it's volume 8, which is titled The Foremost Householder. These are teachings that the Buddha shared for household practitioners, people who aren't ordained. So all of you guys are household practitioners. Me too. I'm a household practitioner. So this volume 8 is designed for household practitioners. And the way that we usually do this portion of our class is I invite volunteers to read this particular chapter, and you can see that it's quite short. It's just this page, and then this one, and then one more. And what you do is you just read this. We have microphones here at the temple, or Jose, you're on Zoom. You can raise your hand electronically if you'd like to read this, and we'll actually hear you here at the temple. And then those of you guys that are on Facebook and YouTube, you're welcome to come into Zoom and read any of these chapters if you like. And then after somebody reads the chapter, I will share about 5 minutes or so of teachings on this particular chapter to help you understand what the Buddha is teaching. But it's very clear, very concise, and very precise. But it just helps to have a teacher provide you some guidance. So is there somebody who would like to read this first chapter? You'd like to read? Sure. Yeah, we can have different people read at different times.
Yeah. So the entire chapter, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
You can read the whole thing.
4 ways of living together. Householders, there are these 4 ways of living together. What for? A wretch lives together with a wretch. A wretch lives together with a female heavenly being. A heavenly being lives together with a wretch. A heavenly being lives together with a female heavenly being. 1. And how? Householders, does a wretch live together with a wretch? Here, the husband is one who destroys life, takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, speaks falsely, and indulges in liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for his heedlessness: he is immoral, an unwholesome character. He resides at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of selfishness. He insults and degrades ascetics and Brahmins.
Aesthetics and
Brahmins. And his wife is also one who destroys life. takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, speaks falsely, and indulges in liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: she is immoral, of unwholesome character. She resides at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of selfishness. She insults and degrades ascetics and Brahmins. It is such a way that a wretch lives together with a wretch. 2. And how does a wretch live together with a female heavenly being? Here the husband is one who destroys lives, takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, speaks falsely, and indulges in liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: he is immoral, of unwholesome character. He resides at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of selfishness. He insults and degrades ascetics and Brahmins. But his wife is one who abstains from this destruction of life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, and from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: she is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, of wholesome character. She resides at home with a mind free from stain of selfishness. She does not insult or degrade ascetics and Brahmins. It is such a way that a wretch lives together with a female heavenly being. 3. And how does a heavenly being live together with a wretch? Here the husband is one who abstains from destruction of life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, and from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: he is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, of wholesome character. He resides at home with a mind free from the stain of selfishness. He does not insult or degrade ascetics and Brahmins. But his wife is one who destroys life, takes what is not given, engages in sexual misconduct, speaks falsely, and indulges in liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: she is immoral, of unwholesome character. She resides at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of selfishness. She insults and degrades ascetics and Brahmins. It is such a way that a heavenly being lives together with a wretch. 4. And how does a heavenly being live together with a female heavenly being? Here, the husband is one who abstains from the destruction of life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: he is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, of wholesome character. He resides at home with a mind free from the stain of selfishness. He does not insult or degrade ascetics and Brahmins. And his wife is also one who abstained from the destruction of life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from false speech, and from liquor, wine, and intoxicants, substances that cause heedlessness. The basis for heedlessness: she is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, of wholesome character. She resides at home with a mind free from the stain of selfishness. She does not insult or degrade ascetics and Brahmins. It is in such a way that a heavenly being lives together with a female heavenly being. These are 4 ways of living together. When both are unwholesome, selfish, and abusive, husband and wife live together as wretches. The husband is unwholesome, selfish, and abusive, but the wife is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, charitable, and generous. She is a female heavenly being with a wretched husband. The husband is virtuous, practicing moral conduct, charitable, generous, but his wife is unwholesome, selfish, and abusive. She is a wretch living with a heavenly being husband. Both husband and wife are enriched with confidence, charitable, and mentally disciplined, living their life righteously, addressing each other with pleasant words. Then many benefits accumulate to them and they reside at ease. Their enemies are saddened when both are are the same in virtue, moral conduct. Having practiced the teachings here, the same in virtuous behavior and observances, delighting after death in a heavenly world, they rejoice and enjoying sensual pleasures.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. So here the Buddha is sharing a teaching with household practitioners about how we live with our life partner. Here he's using male and female genders, but we could easily think of this as female, female, male, male, because today we have many different people who live in different ways. And even during the lifetime of the Buddha, they had these situations too, that males and females live together as well as partners, because it's not possible for every man to be interested in having sex with a woman, or for every woman to be interested in having sex with a man. Some people choose to have sex with the same gender. This is not causing harm to anyone in particular. But here, the Buddha is choosing to use male and female genders as he's talking about husband and wife. But we can very easily substitute other genders in here and other roles as well. So here he's giving guidance about how to live peacefully and at ease with each other. If you're living with a life partner or you're looking to do that at some point, it would be wonderful to build in these qualities into your mind, in your practice, and then also to select a partner that has these qualities as well, the wholesome ones. First, the Buddha is starting off with the first one. He's talking about a wretch living with a wretch, right? He's giving this depiction of two people living together and basically causing all this harm through their conduct. A husband and a wife who destroys life, meaning they kill, they regularly kill. They take what is not given, meaning they're stealing. Engaging in sexual misconduct, meaning going outside of their relationship to have sex with other people. The Buddha goes into detail about these in another teaching. It's called the 5 Precepts, where he goes into a lot of detail explaining what sexual misconduct is. And sexual misconduct is when you're causing harm through your sex, like having sex with minors, or having sex without consent, like rape, or going outside of a relationship that you're currently in, or having sex with someone else who's in a current relationship. This is going to cause harm, and this is why people have been injured and beat up and even murdered over these kinds of things. And this is why we even get sexually transmitted diseases, because we're making unwise choices to have sex with multiple people rather than just being loyal with one individual partner. And in that situation, we're making wiser decisions that are going to produce more wholesome results in our life. And then he talks here about one who speaks falsely. This is one who's lying. If you're lying, then people don't see you as dependable and reliable. You'll find that your personal, professional relationships struggle because people will discover your lies. They will know that you're lying. In your mind itself, how could it be peaceful and joyful? Because you're having to constantly think about, what did I tell to one person versus what did I tell to another person? And you're obsessively trying to figure out, what lies did you tell in the world? So when you speak the truth, your mind can be at ease because you're always speaking the truth. You don't have to obsessively figure out what you said to one person versus another. And then he talks about indulging in liquor, wine, and intoxicants, the substances that cause heedlessness. Heedlessness is unattentiveness, unalertness, unawareness. If you're on this path to enlightenment where you're trying to purify the mind and you're trying to get to this enlightened mental state where the mind is peaceful and joyful, you're going to need mindfulness or awareness of mind, because you need to be aware of what's going on in the mind so that then you can make wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. If you're taking liquor, wine, intoxicants, nowadays even caffeine can produce heedlessness, where the mind's kind of uncalm, it's unsettled, it's unaware. Even these substances like this, the Buddha didn't list every single substance because he didn't have the ability to be able to know that PCP or LSD or some of these chemicals that we have nowadays would ever be invented. So he uses this general terminology of substances that cause heedlessness so that you can apply it to any substance that is created after his death. His teachings are timeless. He's using language and words that you can apply during his lifetime, but also 2,500 years later. So he knew that any substance could have been invented that would produce heedlessness. And if your mind is heedless, if it's unaware, unattentive, or unalert, you're going to have a very difficult time ever experiencing peace and joy in the mind, because your mind's shaken up through taking substances. And if you're looking to purify your mind, you would like to purify what you put in the body in terms of food and liquids, and putting good, healthy things into the body. So then he talks about this immoral, unwholesome character residing at home with a mind obsessed by the stain of selfishness. This is what happens when the mind has craving, desire, attachment, that mental longing and strong eagerness I was talking about before that causes the mind to be discontent. The mind oftentimes becomes selfish, where you hold on to things very tightly, where you're uninterested in giving and sharing. So we practice generosity as a way of training the mind to let go. So you're giving and sharing throughout your day. Whereas if you are at home being selfish, then you're holding on to things very tightly, and your mind's going to be all bound up because it's holding on to your money, your wealth, your time, your effort, your energy, different resources that you have. You're not willing to share with other people. But if you're willing to be generous and you start sharing with people, you'll notice that your mind won't be bound up and holding on to things so tightly. And you'll notice that your anger and other discontent feelings will start to minimize as you train your mind with meditation and generosity. These are two primary trainings that you need, along with other trainings as well. So if someone's selfish, they're not willing to give and share. And when you're giving and sharing, you should do that without any expectation of anything in return. Whereas if you have an expectation that you're going to get something back, then your mind's going to be discontent. For example, say you're generous and you hold the door helping people walk into a store, and you expect that they say thank you. If somebody doesn't say thank you, you'll be angry. You'll be frustrated. You'll be sad maybe. But if you just open the door and hold it because you know it's a wise thing to do, and you're just practicing generosity of sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources more than is strictly required in any given situation, without any expectation of anything in return, not even a thank you. If you can practice generosity without any expectation, when you hold the door, if someone says thank you, wonderful. If they don't say thank you, that's fine too. You didn't hold the door because you wanted something from them. You just held the door because you knew it was a wise thing to do, and you're practicing generosity. So this is part of the practice of getting to enlightenment, is to practice generosity. And then this other unwholesome aspect of this wretch that he's describing is someone who insults and degrades ascetics and Brahmins. Ascetics and Brahmins are people who are sharing the teachings. If you're an ascetic or Brahmin during the lifetime of the Buddha, an ascetic is someone who's giving up worldly life and going into homelessness in order to train their mind to get to enlightenment. And now, as they get closer and closer to enlightenment and cultivate wisdom, they might share the teachings with others and help others get to enlightenment. A Brahmin during the lifetime of the Buddha is a Hindu priest. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there were Hindus that were quite active all throughout India. As you see today, there's a lot of Hindu people that are in India. So a Brahmin is a Hindu priest, and you were born into this family that now you become a Brahmin, and you perform these rites and rituals and ceremonies that are helping people. At least that's what the people believed. During the lifetime of the Buddha, he saw what was going on with these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, and he taught people that this isn't what's going to lead to an improved condition of life. Because what people believe during the lifetime of the Buddha is that if you had some problems or difficulties in your life, you would go to these Brahmin and you would pay them money, and then they would go pray or do some rites or rituals on your behalf. And your life was supposed to get better by paying this fee to them. And the Buddha saw this, and he realized that it wasn't working, and it's not going to work, and that it bred corruption. Because today you go to the Brahmin and you pay them $5, and tomorrow you show up and it's $10. And you're convinced that you can't do anything to improve your life, that you need this person to do this ceremony. You're kind of locked in to paying whatever fee that they say. So that bred a lot of corruption. And the Buddha was saying in part of his teachings, in a very focal very central focal point of his teachings is that it's the natural law of karma, of cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions that lead to improved results. It's not rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship that's going to improve your life. It's you gaining wisdom and you training your mind that's what will lead to improved results in your life, because when you have wisdom, you will make wiser choices that lead to wholesome results. So the Buddha here is talking about degrading or insulting people who are teachers in the community and sharing teachings to help people improve life. Because while the Brahmin did rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, they also did a little bit of teaching too. They did do a little bit of teaching to help people to learn a bit about how to improve their life. So here, this wretch that he's describing either as a husband or a wife is someone who's doing these unwholesome things. And then he talks about wholesome characters, and which is just the opposite of all these things. And he goes through these various iterations, because you can have a husband who's into wholesome things and a wife who's into unwholesome things. Or you can have a husband who's into unwholesome things and a wife who's into wholesome things. But the ideal way of living life as a partnership, if you're going to have a partner, whether it's a man or a woman, is to live like number 4, where you're living like these heavenly beings, is what the Buddha is describing, which is you're in the human realm, but you're living life very well in terms of your wisdom that you've cultivated about this natural law of karma. You understand these various things, that you're choosing not to kill, you're choosing not to steal, not to have sexual misconduct, not to lie, not to take substances that cause heedlessness, to practice virtuous moral conduct, to have a wholesome character, to live at home without the stain of selfishness. So that means that you're generous, that you're willing to give and share and help others through your time, effort, energy, and resources. And you do not insult or degrade people who are sharing teaching in the world, because it's wisdom that's going to lead to an improved way of life. If you live in a society where people are constantly degrading teachers and demoralizing teachers, over time, less and less people are going to be interested in teaching, and that society is going to become less and less wise, because there's less and less people interested to share wisdom. But when we support teachers and we speak polite and respectful and kind and friendly to teachers, then more and more people will be interested in sharing wisdom, and then the population of people can continue to grow and flourish with that wisdom. So here the Buddha is describing how by living this way, that an individual accumulates much benefit by living this way. And here he talks about delighting after death in a heavenly world. The goal of the teachings of the Buddha is not to be reborn in heaven. That's not what he actually taught. Instead, he's just helping you to understand what will occur if you fall short of enlightenment. Once the mind is enlightened, you don't experience rebirth constantly over and over and over again, like we've all been experiencing in the past. There's 5 realms that he taught. He taught the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. But how you get into any of these particular realms is based on your decisions. It's not anybody who's judging you and deciding what realm you should go into. It's your decisions that lead to any particular realm. And now that we're in the human realm, this is the ideal realm to be in, because we can learn and we can train our mind and we can evolve, we can grow, we can learn and develop our mind and our relationships so that we can improve our life, and we can get to enlightenment, and you can get to the point where your mind's peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently for the rest of this life. And you'll see that your mind is doing that as you gradually practice the teachings. But if for any reason you fall short of enlightenment, the same things that lead to enlightenment, the same teachings that lead to enlightenment, they also lead to an improved rebirth if you fall short of enlightenment. So you might be reborn into the heavenly realm, but the heavenly realm is not a permanent destination, and those beings are still in the cycle of rebirth. They still have to get to enlightenment. They can easily be reborn into any of the other realms. In the heavenly realm, these beings experience exclusively pleasant feelings, so they oftentimes have complacency that they don't experience painful feelings like we do here in the human realm. We experience sadness, anger, frustration, guilt, shame, fear, things like this. So we tend to have built-in motivation to get away from those painful feelings, to be able to learn and practice the teachings of the Buddha in order to get to enlightenment. In the heavenly realm, because they only experience pleasant feelings, like happiness, excitement, elation, thrill, exhilaration, euphoria. They don't have that built-in motivation that we have. So they tend to be very complacent and they don't actually learn and practice teachings. So oftentimes heavenly beings are reborn into other realms, and therefore they still need to do the work in order to get to enlightenment. And in that heavenly realm, they can get to enlightenment from there, but because of their complacency, they oftentimes aren't doing the work, so they get reborn into other realms. So here the Buddha is just explaining true reality, that if you are practicing this wholesome way and you don't get to enlightenment, if you and a partner are living in this very healthy, morally wholesome way, that you can be reborn into this heavenly world. But that's not the actual goal. The actual goal, when you see all the teachings of the Buddha, are to get to enlightenment and escape this whole continuous cycle of rebirth. So let me see if you guys have any questions on this chapter. You can just ask questions here at the temple with the microphones, or for those of you guys online, you're welcome to put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions or follow-up questions directly. I see your comment there, Jose. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. I don't see any questions here online, so if there's someone who would like to volunteer. Oh, you have a question? Okay, perfect.
Yeah. So I noticed that it's very repetitive, the teaching, like the paragraphs. Is that because of the way they were brought across with those chants, or is it just here?
Yeah, so when you're teaching an oral tradition, there's essentially three things you're doing in order to help people remember your teachings, because that's the only way people can get to enlightenment, is if they remember your teachings. You tell stories, because people will remember stories. You give lists, like the Four Noble Truths, the Three Universal Truths, the Eightfold Path, the Five Precepts, the Seven Factors of Enlightenment, the Three Poisons. Because if you have the five precepts and you remember four, you're like, I know there's a fifth one. I know there's a fifth one. What's the fifth? The fifth one. Okay, that's the fifth one, right? So having lists will help you remember. And then the third thing you do to help people remember an oral tradition is you make it repetitive, where you say essentially the same things over and over and over and over again. So what the Buddha does when he teaches is he'll start out a discourse. He's going to tell you what he's going to tell you. So if you look at this discourse at the very top, he's going to tell you what he's going to tell you. You know, there's these four ways of living together. What for? And he tells you those four. He's like, this is what I'm going to tell you. Okay. Then he tells it to you. He tells you the detail. Then he tells you what he told you. That's this last part here. He tells you what he told you. Even today, there's experts that tell you that this is a great way to present information. They don't necessarily know that the Buddha taught this way, but if you go to like business communication courses and stuff like this, or management courses, they will teach you that this is the way to present information to an audience, is tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them. So the Buddha figured this out 2,500 years ago, and that's the way he taught. And he used this repetition as a way to do that, to kind of ingrain it and soak it into people's minds. So this is a great method of teaching, and you'll see this repetition in his teachings. And it helps you to learn it because you kind of read it over and over and over again.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're welcome. Okay, so let's move on to the next chapter, which is chapter 22. This is a chapter about the natural law of karma, which pretty much everything the Buddha taught is the natural law of karma. Even that last one that we taught is based on the natural law of karma, where he's explaining to you wisdom about how to conduct your life in a wise way that is going to produce wholesome results for you. But here he's going to teach you very specific things about the natural law of karma. Is there someone who would like to read this one?
six aspects of Gama to be understood. Monks, when it was said Gama should be understood, the creation of Gama should be understood, the diversity of Gama should be understood, the result of Gama should be understood, the elimination of a creation of Gama should be understood, the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Gama should be understood. For what reason was this said? Is volition choices decisions monks set one Gama for having wilder intentional choices decisions one acts by body, speech, or mind. And what is the creation of Gama? Contact is creation. And what is the diversity of Gama? There is Gama to be experienced in hell. There is Gama to be experienced in the animal realm. There is Gama to be experienced in the realm of afflicted spirits. There is Gama to be experienced in the human realm. There is Gama to be experienced in the heavenly realm. This is called the diversity of Gama. And what is the result of Gama? The result of Gama, I say, is threefold: to be experienced in this very life, or in this next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. This is called the result of Gama. And what marks is the elimination of the creation of Gama. With the elimination of contact, there is elimination of the creation of Gama. The Noble Eightfold Path is the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Gama, nearly right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. When most noble discipline thus understands Gama, the creation of Gama, the diversity of Gama, the result of Gama, the elimination of the creation of Gama, and the way leading to the elimination of the unwholesome Gama, he understands this penetrative special life to the elimination of wholesome Gama. When it was said Gama should be understood, the creation of Gama should be understood, the diversity Gama should be understood, the result of Gama should be understood, the elimination of the creation of Gama should be understood, the way leading to the elimination of unwholesome Gama should be understood. It is because of this that it was said.
Thank you so much. All right. So this is a teaching that the Buddha is describing the 6 aspects of Gama to be understood, and is following that same structure that we talked about, where he's going to tell you what he's going to tell you, he's going to tell you, and then he's going to tell you what he told you. So there's these 6 things that he's explaining. The first one here is, he says, it is volition, monks, that I call Gama. What volition is the choices and decisions that you make. You need to have intention behind your decisions in order to produce Gama. Gama is the results of your decisions. That's what the natural law of karma is, or karma. It's just a word that doesn't translate to one English word, or I would just use that English word. All the teachings that I share, except for maybe 2 or 3 words, are all in English. If this word translated to just one English word, I would just translate it to that word, but it doesn't. It's the results of your decisions, and you need to have intention behind a decision in order for it to produce some result. So let me give you an example. If you went outside and you killed another human being and intentionally murdered this person, you're going to experience unwholesome results because it's unwise to kill a human being. And if you're killing a human being, there's probably going to be other human beings who attack you. There's going to be people who maybe try to lock you up and put you in jail. And then when you go to jail, you're going to be experiencing all kinds of unwholesome results based on your unwise decision because you intentionally killed this human being. But if you were walking down the street after class and you're on your way to a restaurant and there happens to be an ant under your foot as you're walking down the street, you're not intentionally killing the ant. You probably didn't even see the ant. There's no intention behind it. So there's no karma that's created. There's no results of your decisions because you didn't make a decision to kill the ant. You made a decision to walk down the street. That's what you were doing. So that's why you don't experience unwholesome results because there's no anger or hatred or ill will behind it. Whereas if you intentionally murdered a human being, there's a certain amount of anger, hatred, and ill will that's behind that in order to murder this person. And that's why you're experiencing certain results in one situation versus another. So there needs to be intention behind your decisions in order for there to be karma. The second thing he's talking about here is that in order to create karma, there needs to be contact, meaning contact with each other or another being, contact through the 6 sense bases, the eyes, the ears, the nose, the tongue, the body, or the mind itself. He talks about this in other teachings. Here he's just summarizing it, and he's saying there needs to be contact. So when we're in contact like this, we're creating karma together. Right? We're creating the results of your decisions are you chose to come to the temple, you're having contact with a teacher, and now that you're having this contact with the teacher, you're gaining wisdom. You've made a wise choice to come to the temple because now you learned how to meditate. You meditated a little bit while you're here. You're learning some of the teachings of the Buddha. This is contact, and it's producing wholesome karma because it's wise to learn these teachings. Whereas if you would have chose to go to a bar, for example, and drink alcohol, you're having contact at that bar and it's unwise to drink alcohol, for example, and now you're experiencing unwholesome karma. So there needs to be contact in order for there to be karma. So say you go home and say your mom or dad are arguing. If you jump into the conversation and you have contact with mom and dad while they're arguing, now you're making an unwise decision to be argumentative, and now it's going to produce unwholesome karma. Whereas if there's no contact, whereas if you came to the door, you heard them yelling and screaming inside, and I'm not saying you should necessarily do this, but let's just say you chose to leave and you didn't go inside, you didn't have any contact with mom and dad, so there was no karma created. Right? So just giving you an example of how karma is created, that there needs to be contact in order to create karma. Then the Buddha talks here about the diversity of karma. Here he's talking about karma is experienced in all 5 realms: hell, animal realm, afflicted spirits, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. We experience karma in all 5 of these realms. Then he says here the results of karma are experienced either in this very life, the next rebirth, or some subsequent occasion. What he's essentially saying with these 2 statements is you can't run and hide from your karma. Any decisions you make, either wise or unwise, you're going to experience the results of those, either in this life, the next life, or some future life after that, in one of these 5 realms. So when you understand that you can't run and hide from your unwise decisions, the wise individual would say, well, let me learn about this natural law so I can make wise decisions so I don't keep experiencing these unwholesome results continuing to come back to me. So that's what you can glean from these 2 particular statements. Then number 5, He's saying, in what, monks, is the elimination of the creation of Kama? Well, if Kama is created through contact, the way to stop creating Kama is to eliminate contact. So that's the example I gave you, where if you show up to the door and you hear your parents arguing inside, it might not be wise to go inside. It might be wise to just stay outside, maybe go see a friend, go to have something to eat, go to the mall, come back another time or something like that. Because when you have contact, it's going to create Kama. So when you don't have contact, there's no Kama created. Then the Buddha says, what's the way to eliminate unwholesome Kama? Because in your past, before you knew the natural law of Kama, you've made certain unwise decisions in the past. We all have. And those unwise decisions have led to unwholesome results in our life. But the way that you eliminate unwholesome Kama is you produce more and more wholesome Kama. The way you produce wholesome Kama is the Eightfold Path, that core central teaching of the Buddha that we were talking about earlier. This is how you produce wholesome Kama, is you make wiser and wiser and wiser and wiser decisions. He's providing you in the Eightfold Path a life practice of what it takes to produce wholesome Kama. So it's kind of like if you have a garden hose and all throughout your life you've been putting mud into this garden hose. What you do is you hook the garden hose up to a faucet, and then you turn on the faucet and you blast a bunch of clean water through the garden hose. That's how you get all the mud out. And now eventually you got clean water coming out of the garden hose. But it's going to spit mud for a while. So it's the Eightfold Path. By you learning and practicing with the wisdom of the Eightfold Path, that's the clean water going into your garden hose that's going to clean out all the unwholesome Kama. And that's what the Buddha is explaining here. It's that the Eightfold Path is the way to eliminate all unwholesome Kama, so that as as results of decisions you've made from the past come back to you, rather than continuing to make unwise decisions and produce unwholesome results, you can make wise decisions that extinguishes that unwholesome Kama. So for example, say you filled out a tax form and you submitted it 3 years ago to your government. And now the government, as you submitted this tax form 3 years ago, perhaps you lied on this tax form. And now 3 years later, they send you a notice that you owe them $3,000. And you're like, oh my goodness, I don't have $3,000. What happened? Right? So in the past, before you know the teachings, you might have continued to lie and have deceit and try to run away from this bill. Well, if you understand you can't run away from your Kama, then what you would do wisely is decide to take responsibility for this and now resolve it, because you're trying to extinguish this. Maybe you call up the government and you say, hey, I apologize. I made a mistake. I was wrong. I take full responsibility for this, but I don't have $3,000. Is there a way I can do like a payment plan or something like that? And then those people will probably work with you because you're being honest and you're taking responsibility for what you did. Whereas if you continue to lie and be deceitful, it would produce more unwholesome Kama for you, and you would experience continuous unwholesome results. So the way that you eliminate unwholesome Kama is that you learn the Eightfold Path, which is teaching you the natural law of Kama, so that now you can start putting more and more clean water. You can put more and more wholesome decisions into your life, and now you can experience more and more wholesome results because you're making wise decisions. So this is the 6 aspects of Kama to understand, because one of the things that you're doing among everything on the path to enlightenment is you're working to extinguish your unwholesome decisions. You've made certain decisions about your friends and your family and where to live and what job to have and certain things in your life. You've made many different decisions, and those decisions are all impacting you today. And you might have certain struggles and difficulties in your life based on those decisions that you've made. But when you understand the natural law of Kama through the teachings of the Buddha, you can clean up those unwise decisions that you made. So if there's anything in your life that you don't like and that you don't like how things are going in your life, you can change it. You can improve it when you have wisdom. But when you don't have wisdom and you lack wisdom, you'll struggle and have difficulties of cleaning up the decisions that you've made, and you'll keep experiencing more and more unwholesome results based on unwise decisions. So this is how you clean up your life. You clean up your life practice by learning the natural law of karma and making wiser and wiser decisions that produce more and more wholesome results. Do you guys have any questions on this chapter? Yes, sir.
Yes. You said like intention, and so if you don't have intention, it's no karma, right? So I saw last 3 years ago a person who followed from like the high building, and he doesn't have an intention. He just follow his step, and he doesn't have a karma.
So he slipped and fell off the building?
Yes.
Okay. So he's making certain decisions that led to this, right? He chose to go up into the building. He chose to walk on the edge of a building. He didn't have certain concentration that he maybe needed in order to do that. And as a result of his decisions, he experienced falling, and it sounds like he died.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
So this was a result of his decisions. It was his karma. He might not have had the intention to die, but he had the intention to go up in that high building. He had the intention to walk on the edge. He didn't have concentration or the ability to maintain his balance. And as a result of his decisions, he fell off the building and he died. This is the karma, the result of his decisions. Not punishment and rewards or anything like this, but think of it as a sequencing of events, sequencing of decisions that were made that led to this outcome. And because of the unwise decisions, it produced that particular unwholesome result.
And also like karma. So the last, can you scroll down?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
Which one would you like to go to?
Next step, like
More?
more. Yeah. So karma should be the like creation of the karma.
Can you put the mic up a little bit closer? I can't hear you.
Yeah. Yes. So you said like the animal. So if I don't have an intention, so if kill there's some animal, so there's no karma.
It's not the fact that you kill an animal, because say you went out in the woods and you saw a bird and you intentionally killed the bird. There's karma there because you had intention to kill. The example I gave was just walking down the street and there's an ant under your foot. And in that situation, you didn't have any intention to kill. Your intention is to walk from here to the restaurant. And the animal got killed because it was an ant and it was under your foot. But if you walked around, let's use the same example. If you walked from here to the restaurant for lunch and you were intentionally stomping and twisting your foot and trying to kill ants, there's intention behind that. And now there's results. In there, what you're doing is you're practicing the anger, the hatred, the ill will. And now this rising up in your mind, this is producing unwholesome results for you. So you would like to get to the point where you're not interested in killing other beings, that you're disinterested in causing harm, and you're incapable of causing harm. This is part of the Eightfold Path. As part of right intention in the Eightfold Path, here you see the second step is called right intention. Under right intention, there's three aspects. One is the intention of renunciation. Two is the intention of non-ill will, or non-ill will is goodwill. That's what non-ill will is. It's a double negative, or loving kindness. And then the third aspect of right intention is the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So that's like the right thinking or the right thought. Whereas if you walked around with hateful and vindictive thoughts, resentful thoughts, this is going to plague your mind, and it's going to plague the decisions that you're making through your speech and your actions and the way that you interact in the world. You'll interact in a very hateful and harmful way. But if you have right intention, you're disinterested in harming others. When you walk down the street, if an ant gets killed under your foot, you're not intentionally killing that ant, so there's no karma. Whereas if you walked and intentionally were stomping your feet and trying to kill, this is going to cause you harmful results in your life, because there's that intention, and it's an unwise intention, and that's why it produces unwholesome results. But if you have wisdom, then you learn what the wisdom as a human being, it's wise to practice harmlessness. And when you practice harmlessness, this is very wise, so therefore it's going to produce wholesome results for you. So when you're at work, when you're talking to your mom or dad, your brothers, your sisters, here at the temple, you're practicing harmlessness. You're disinterested in harming, and that's why you're experiencing wholesome results.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, ma'am.
Hello? Yeah. Just want to echo the gentleman's first question. So the disease, like serious disease, is not a karma, right? Because you're not intended to get sick, like cancer. So it's not a topic here. Disease is not one kind of karma.
Everything we experience in life is karma.
Okay.
Every single thing, even when we get cancer. But again, don't think of it as punishment and rewards. You're not being punished if someone has cancer. It's a sequencing of events. Because we were born, we have to die. There's no way around that, right? This life is impermanent. And this body, it can't be permanently healthy. It's impossible. This is called the universal truth of impermanence, where things are constantly changing. So because we're born, we have to die. As long as there's an existence in this human body, it's going to be sick. So cancer is one of those sicknesses. And depending on the choices we make, we can be more likely to have cancer or less likely to have cancer. For example, if we eat meat, we're more likely to have cancer than if we don't. It doesn't mean someone who doesn't eat meat can't get cancer. It just means they're less likely to get cancer. And there's other risk factors, like, if you work in a factory that has poison, and now your job is to work in a factory with poisons, and you're breathing in this poison throughout your job for 20 years, you're very likely to get cancer, right? And there's different things like this that can more likely lead to cancerous situations. So anything we experience, it's all based on our decisions. Whereas if we train our mind and we get to enlightenment, we're not going to be reborn to come back into the world and experience birth, aging, sickness, and death. We keep experiencing this over and over and over again because we haven't gotten to enlightenment. But by the time you get to enlightenment, you won't experience that continuous birth, aging, sickness, and death over and over and over again. But it's the results of your decisions that's going to determine whether you get to enlightenment or not. It's not anyone else's decisions. It's your decisions. By you reading books, coming to the temple, choosing to meditate, talk with a teacher, asking questions like you're doing, by you gaining more and more wisdom, you can train your mind and see the progression of the mind as it improves the condition of the mind. And this is the results of your decisions. And then you can get to the point where you don't have existence in the human realm any longer. So therefore you won't get cancer. But as long as we keep making decisions not to get to enlightenment, we will keep coming back and being reborn over and over and over again with the potential of having cancer. So it's always the results of our decisions. You guys are asking some great questions. And I know most of you guys haven't studied these teachings before, so this is outstanding. Right now it's 11 o'clock. I usually take a break at some point in order to give you guys a chance to take a little break. we study 10 chapters per week, but we're not going to have time to go through all 10 chapters, which is completely fine. I usually, in this particular course at the temple, just study whatever you guys would like to study in terms of the chapters. When I teach at nighttime at home, it's a little bit more of ability to ensure that I teach all 10 chapters. But here at the temple, we tend to talk about meditation and do other things that we don't typically have time to necessarily study all the 10 chapters. But I would like to just check in with you guys because we've been together now for about 2 hours. And I would just like to see, would you guys like to continue on and study some more? Would you like to take a break? Would you like to end here? It's completely up to you guys. I'm fine either way. Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Maybe you want to have a break and get some water.
Mm-hmm.
But I really enjoy learning so much
Mm-hmm.
about Buddhism, and I also had some more questions in general that I was just very curious about when I'm walking through time.
Okay. Yeah, so sounds like you would like to do some more learning. Yeah.
Or just have some general questions.
Okay, sure. Yeah, and we all don't have to make the same decision. I just would like to give you guys a heads up because on the plan I have in there that we usually take a break at 10:30. And now that it's 11 o'clock, I'd like to just let you guys know you're welcome to take a break. I'll just go ahead and keep teaching then, and we can stop at our normal stopping time, which is 12. And if you guys need a bathroom, in the very back of the room, there's a bathroom, the very last door on the right. There's some water over here that you're welcome to help yourself to. If you need to get up and walk around and stretch your legs, feel free to do any of that kind of stuff. Okay? So we'll just go ahead and keep going then and see what the next chapter is. Oh, this is a very interesting chapter. Is there someone who would like to read this?
May I ask
Yes,
one
sir.
question? So
You have more questions? Sure.
Yeah. So you say like no action, no karma, right?
Correct.
Is how could be possible? So if I don't action, so how could be like possible? Would you like to elaborate more? Like
so
I didn't understand that.
Any results that we experience, there's some cause, there's some action that it has occurred. Like, for example, like just right here, like I couldn't hear you. Why? Because you hold the microphone away. But then when you put the microphone back, I could hear you, right? This is a cause and effect, or action and result. This is the Gamma. We could back it up even further. Like, why do we even have microphones and speakers here? Well, students came and they benefited from the teachings that I'm sharing, and they would like other people to benefit from those teachings. So they donated money in order to purchase this equipment so that now we can have a class and we can live stream it and other people can learn from the teachings. This is the natural law of Gamma. Why did people donate to be able to share the teachings? Well, because they benefited from the teachings. There was this cause and effect, or action and result. Everything you experience, like the clothing that you're wearing, this is your Gamma, right? At some point, somebody either gave you these clothes or you worked and earned money and you went out and purchased them. This is your Gamma, the results of your decisions. I see you have a nice haircut. Why? Because you chose that. There was an action and then there was a result, or there was a cause and there was effect. This is your Gamma, the results of your decisions.
So instead of karma means my choice.
Gamma is the results of your decisions. Mm-hmm. And in order to get to that Gamma, there has to be a choice. There has to be a decision that's being made. There's a cause and effect, or action and result. Mm-hmm. Would you like to read this chapter, Manson? I think, yeah, go for it. So you get two benefits. You get to learn Buddhism and practice your English at the same time. Yeah.
The smile of lamb of salt. Monks, if one were to stay thus, a person experienced karma in precisely the same way that he created it. Is this a case? There could be no living of the spiritual life and no opportunity would be seen for completely making an end of discontentedness. But if one were to say thus, when a person creates karma that is to be experienced in a particular way, he experiences it precisely in that way. In such a case, living of the spiritual life is possible and an opportunity is seen for completely making an end of discontentedness. Here's monks, some person has created a small amount of unwholesome karma, yet it leads him to hell. While some other person here has created exactly the same small amount of karma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life without even a slight residues being seen, much less plentiful residues. When kind of person creates a small amount of unwholesome karma that leads him to be healed. Here some person is deployed in body, spirituals, behavior, mind, and wisdom. He is limited and has a mean character, and he dwells in discontentedness. When such a person creates a small amount of unwholesome karma, it leads him to hell. What kind of person created exactly the some small amount of unwholesome karma, and yet it is to be experienced in this very life without even a slight residues being seen, much less plentiful residues. Here some person is deployed in body, piteous behavior, mind, and wisdom. He is unlimited and has a lofty character, and his residence without measure. When such a person created exactly the same small amount of unwholesome karma, it is to be experienced his very life without even a slightly resident be much less painful residues. Suppose a man would drop a lamp of salt into a small bowl of water. What do you think, monks? Would that lamp of salt make the small quantity of water in the bowl saltly in and drinkable? Yes, Venerable sir. For what reason? Because the water in a bowl is limited. Thus the lamp of salt would make it saltly and undrinkable. But suppose a man would drop a lamp of salt into the river Ganges. What do you think, monks? Would the lamp of the salt make the river Ganges become salty and drinkable? No, Minister, sir. For what reason? Because the river Ganges contains a larger volume of water. Thus the lamp of salt would not make it salty and undrinkable. So too, monks, some person here has created a small amount of unwholesome karma, yet it leads him to hell. while some other person here has created exactly some small amount of karma, yet it is to be experienced in this very life, without even its slight residues being seen, much less abundant residues. Here's amongst some is a inspiration for stealing.
I'm going to pause you here for a second, Mason. Now, let me explain what's going on so far, because it goes on for a little bit more here into a little bit more detail. Let me explain so far what we've got, okay? So, and actually this first part really explains the whole thing. So this is called the simile of a lump of salt. And what the Buddha is explaining to you is how different people experience the same thing, but they experience it in different ways. He has another discourse where he talks about Kama, and he says that if you tried to figure out the exact result of Kama, that it would lead to your madness or frustration. So you can't say like, okay, I stole a piece of gum when I was 6 years old. What is going to happen to me because of that? And the same thing going to happen to you is going to happen to the other person. That's not actually true. Everybody's going to be experiencing the results of their decisions differently. There's some things that we can say in terms of the natural law of karma, like if you kill, you have a shorter lifespan. If you have sexual misconduct, these kinds of things will happen. We can talk about those things, but it's not exactly the same. Right? There's some people, for example, using sexual misconduct that might have sex with many man or woman, and they never have a sexually transmitted disease, right? And there could be other people that do exactly the same thing, and they have sexually transmitted diseases regularly, and maybe they even get HIV and die, right? People experience things differently, and that's what the Buddha is explaining here. So the water that he's talking about in the bowl of water versus the river Ganges, this water represents the wholesome decisions that you've made, the wholesomeness. The lump of salt represents the unwholesomeness, the unwise decisions. So if you have just a little bowl of water, meaning you haven't made very many wise and wholesome decisions in your life, and this lump of salt goes into your bowl of water, this bowl of water is undrinkable. Whereas if you have the river Ganges, which is all this water, it's a big major river in India. This is the region of the world where the Buddha was born. He was born in Nepal and he taught in India. This river Ganges, having so much water, if this same exact lump of salt was in the river Ganges, it wouldn't be undrinkable. You could still drink the water. It's a fresh river water, right? So depending on what decisions you've made throughout your life is going to determine whether you experience those results in one way versus another way. So if you're generally a really wholesome person and doing lots and lots of wholesome things, and say something bad happens, say you get a speeding ticket and you go to court and the judge looks at your driving record and you have a spotless driving record. And they're like, this is your first offense. You've been driving for 20 years. You know what? We're just going to forgive you on this one. You haven't had a ticket in 20 years. This is your first ticket. No worries, we'll throw it out. No worries. But say somebody else went to court and they had like 50 speeding tickets and now they've got their 51st speeding ticket. The judge is going to be like, all right, yep, you need to pay this fine. There's no way that you can get away from this speeding ticket. You have been speeding and you've been caught 50 times, right? So that's the small bowl of water, right? Like this person is going to experience their karma because they're continuously making unwise decisions in their life, versus someone who has lots of water, lots of wholesome things. They're not going to experience the karma in the exact same way. So that's what the Buddha is explaining to you here. And then he's going on here. He's going to explain to you, it's just basically another story with the same underlying theme. Here he's going to talk about an individual who steals money and this person doesn't have very much money themselves. They're impoverished, and they steal some money, and the Buddha says this person's going to be prosecuted to the fullest extent. And then he talks about a person who has lots of property and who's quite wealthy, and then he says this person, if they stole the same amount of money, they're not going to be prosecuted as closely because they have more wealth, right? And this is what we see today in the world, that when people lack resources, they're oftentimes struggling and experiencing more significant results than someone who maybe has wealth, right? So the Buddha is explaining the natural law of karma. Then he talks about another example. He talks about a sheep merchant or a butcher execute or imprison and penalized for having stolen a sheep. And then he's talking about someone with lots of property and wealth having stolen the same thing, like a king or a royal minister. They won't have as much difficulties having stolen a sheep, for example. So the Buddha's not saying this is the way it should be. He's just explaining to you the way it is, the way that the natural law of karma works, so that you can be more aware of it, and then you can make wise decisions in your life about how to conduct your life. So rather than read the whole thing, because I think it'll take us quite a while to read it all, I'll just kind of summarize it for you, because the bowl of water really explains it quite well, right? Do you guys have any questions on this one? The simile of a lump of salt.
Maybe not directly related, but more related to this difference in wealth and poverty. I noticed in Thailand, until so far, that there were surprisingly little homeless people or beggars, or not so apparent on the street as I knew them in Berlin. And I was wondering how maybe Buddhism plays a role in this.
Yeah, so actually Thailand has 300,000 homeless people. They're ordained practitioners. People who are ordained as a monk, they're considered homeless. Okay. This is what the Buddha teaches. But yes, like people living on the street, we don't have that very much here in Thailand, because what you see is families and community taking care of each other, where I grew up, that's not necessarily the case. If you can't pay your bills, you're out on the street living on the sidewalk, and you don't even really have food or clothing or a place to take a shower. Where here in Thailand, families really help each other and friends, and you can always go ordain if you are truly struggling in life. You can go live at a temple and be actually homeless, which is you have a place to sleep though, you have clothes, you have food to eat, and you're gaining wisdom about how to improve your life. Because whatever led to your homelessness, there were certain decisions that you made that led to that. And if you can learn and you can gain wisdom, then you can overcome any kind of homelessness. But if people just live on the street and that's it, then they're not gaining any wisdom to overcome the challenges that led to them living on the street. So here in Thailand, you'll see that people will help each other a lot. And in situations, some people will just go ordain and then gain wisdom to help them overcome whatever challenges they're struggling with.
Okay, thank you. So do you think is it common that people go ordain if they have a lot of struggles with getting food, shelter?
There are some people who use ordaining to get away from poverty. Even as a child, like if you are a family living in a village and maybe you have 3 children and you have a 4th pregnancy that wasn't necessarily planned, and maybe you're really struggling to even feed those 3, and now a 4th one comes along, they might wait until the child gets to a certain age, maybe 8 or 10 or 6 even, and ask the child if they would like to go live at the temple. And then by living at the temple is supported by the entire community, because the entire community will go and share food and share money to be able to pay for the water and the electric. And then what's going on at that temple is they're learning, they're teaching them wisdom. And some of these temples even have schools, like elementary schools or high schools, and even colleges they have that are for ordained practitioners. So there's this whole network of this mental health resource that's available here, and it's been created over the 800 to 1200 years that Buddhism has been here. And the Thais understand that it's wisdom that is going to lead to an improved and better way of life for you. So these temples, they're a place to learn. It's like a community center, and they're supported by the entire community. So it's like a self-funded mental health network that is available to anybody to walk into. Like you walked in and you found somebody that can teach you and help you. This is supporting people in the community to improve their mental health, because as you learn about the teachings and you train your mind, it's going to improve your mental health. Where a lot of Western countries, we might go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist and end up spending a certain amount of money in order to receive those services. Where here, the cost is kind of spread out over many people, and it's like a self-funded mental health network with this national resource that has been created all throughout Thailand based on generosity and people giving to support an environment where people can come and learn and grow and develop and evolve. And you can ordain into that monastery or any monastery, and you can unordain anytime you like, whether it's because of poverty, or you'd like more education, or maybe you've been in a marriage and things didn't go well and you separated and you'd like to go live the life of an ordained practitioner for a period of time, or maybe you're addicted to substances, or maybe you've been married for a really long period of time and you're 60, 70 years old. Maybe your partner has died, and rather than stay at home and be all by yourself, you're like, hey, why don't I go live at the temple, and then I can gain wisdom and grow and evolve rather than just staying here without my partner. So there's different reasons why people might ordain. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there's only one reason to ordain, which is to get to enlightenment. And that's how, or that's why people would ordain. Nowadays, people ordain for various reasons, but once you ordain, your ultimate goal should be to get to enlightenment.
And when you say to ordain, does it mean to become a monk also when you live at the temple? Or?
Yeah, if you are ordaining, you're becoming a monk. Or we have male and female monks in Thailand. There's not as many females because when Buddhism came to Thailand 800 to 1200 years ago, we think that it came from Sri Lanka. And when the people came from Sri Lanka over the water, it was a very long journey, 800 to 1200 years ago, and travel wasn't as reliable as it is nowadays. So the women didn't come with Buddhism. The Buddhist practitioners who came were the male monks. So when Buddhism came to Thailand, it was only the male monks that came originally. So the male ordained community got really well established here in Thailand, and the females never got established. But in the last 20 years, there's been some females that are starting to kind of reinvigorate and create the female ordained path, that there's now about 300 or 400 females that are ordained in Thailand, and it's growing all the time. You know, people are experiencing more and more support, where now there's the female ordained path where females can ordain as well. So it's starting to kind of be brought back in now that Thailand kind of hasn't had it for 800 to 1200 years, but in Sri Lanka, they have it. So, but they just didn't travel to Thailand with the males when they came, because it's a long journey, you know, going to a place really far away that they didn't know. So I guess the females chose to stay behind.
That's really interesting. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
Yeah, I found this chapter interesting because what surprised me is the Buddha didn't tell us each action causes the same consequences. Mm-hmm. So the Buddha didn't tell us everything is fear. I mean, is equal. So it accepted that there are differences, different consequences of the same actions. So I wonder what is the implication of this chapter. So if you want to be the rich guys like here, or because the consequence may be more acceptable.
Yeah. So what he's really helping you to see is to understand the disparity. When you look out at the world, oftentimes people think like, oh, these bad things are happening to me and that person, nothing bad is happening to them. Why? Well, there's certain causes and conditions. And if you're experiencing a certain amount of unwholesome karma in this life, that's from our unwise decisions. But as you notice where he's talking about experiencing karma in this life versus experiencing it in a future life, you would rather experience your karma in this life, because if you can experience your karma in this life and extinguish it, you can extinguish your unwholesome karma and get to enlightenment, because part of getting to enlightenment is you're extinguishing all your unwholesome karma. So if you've got so much unwholesome karma that you can't experience it all in this life, you need to experience it in a future life, in a future life, in a future life. That's undesirable. That's not what you're interested in. But if you're at a point where, like the Buddha's talking about here, where this person is experiencing their karma now in this life, this is actually very helpful. That you can see like, okay, maybe I'm experiencing a lot of this unwholesome results, that I'm making unwise decisions, and maybe that person isn't experiencing their unwholesome karma in this life, but you're not interested in being that person necessarily. You would like to experience your karma in this life so you can extinguish it and then overcome it and get to the point where you've producing only wholesome karma through making wise decisions. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online either. Do you have more questions you would like to ask about different things you've seen in Thailand? What would you like to ask them in class, or would you like to talk about them privately? I'm thinking to switch over to your questions, because we could keep studying the words of the Buddha here. There's plenty more for us to study. There's 13 books, right? There's plenty for us to study, but I'm thinking that I would like to be sure you have the opportunity to ask your questions and then get answers to them. So you guys okay if we switch over to this? Okay.
Also, the questions have already been answered in your teaching.
Oh, sure. Sure. This way the online people can hear.
This question relates to something that you said earlier about the teaching of Buddha, that they get mixed with worship and other rules and traditions. I noticed that a lot of trees are being worshipped or honored. Does that relate to Buddhism in some way, or is that from a other religion?
Okay, so when Buddhism came to Thailand 800 to 1200 years ago, what was already being practiced in Thailand is various folk traditions. And part of that is animism. Animism is the worship of inanimate objects, and you think that these inanimate objects should be worshipped, like a tree. It's not an animate object, it's inanimate, meaning it doesn't have a true life. It doesn't have consciousness and things like this, or like the water or the mountains. So the Thais are like wrapping these trees, thinking that they have a spirit inside of them and they need to worship this tree, right? So when Buddhism came in 800 to 1200 years ago, it wasn't like on Friday somebody made a countrywide announcement like, Monday we're going to be up and running on Buddhism 2.0. Be sure you delete all your old files, and then on Monday we're going to be up and running on this new system, right? That's not the way it works. It gradually comes into the culture and is gradually mixed and merged with what the people were already doing. So this is what happened over that period of time. And now what you see is you see the remnants of this animism and folk beliefs and folk traditions that have been merged into Buddhism. And the average Thai person who grows up in a certain village, they might think that that is part of Buddhism. But somebody from the outside looking in, you can see like, this is animism, this is Hinduism, this is Christianity, this is Buddhism. And to a Thai person, they might be mixing all of that stuff together and thinking that it's Buddhism, but it's not. So the Buddha never taught to worship inanimate objects like that, but Thai people, for some people, they do this, but it's just from their past. It's not something that the Buddha actually taught.
Okay, thank you. That's very interesting. So, yeah, I also saw a lot of elephants and animal statues around the temples, which might then relate to that or Hinduism as well, I think. Or
this is actually part of the teachings of the Buddha. He didn't teach to make statues of animals and stuff like this, but the reason why they have animals in their temples, like statues, but also real animals as well, is because there's like this dichotomy between the human realm and the animal realm where people are kind of like comparing and contrasting, because a lot of human beings are reborn out of the animal realm into the human realm. And now that we're in the human realm, we have the best opportunity to get to enlightenment. In the animal realm, they can't actually get to enlightenment in that existence. They have to get to a human birth or a heavenly birth. So now that we're in the human realm, it's like the ideal place to get to enlightenment. So there's animals oftentimes around in statue form or actual real animals. And this is to help remind you, like, thank goodness you're human. You have the opportunity to get to enlightenment. Don't be complacent. Use this time very wisely to learn and practice and develop your mind and train your mind so you can get to enlightenment. So it's there to remind you about that. That's why they have these statues and animals around. And then also the real animals too. The Thais and Buddhist practitioners in general have an interest in helping beings and animals being in the animal realm, because we know they can't get to enlightenment. One of the things that hinders them from getting to enlightenment is they're typically killing in order to eat. Or fight, or they're aggressive. They're usually stealing like food and stuff like that. They're usually having sexual misconduct. So this natural law of Gama is affecting them, even though they don't know about it because they're in the animal realm. So as humans, we can feed them and take care of them a little bit as a way to kind of lift them up in society, kind of lift them up so that they'll have a better opportunity to get to a human rebirth in their next rebirth. So you'll see a certain amount of animals in temples within Thailand because people are kind of trying to help them so that they can get to an improved rebirth in their next life.
Okay, wow. If you guys want to also head in with some questions.
Yeah, you guys can ask any questions you like.
Yeah, because I need to leave soon, so I got one last question. It's about the Monday to Saturday's class. How can I sign for it, or do any preparation for that?
The Monday through Friday class next week? Yeah, you can just show up on Monday at 9 a.m. That's when the class starts. So if you show up a little bit early like you did today.
Here, right?
Right here. There is a place to sign up online that you can register, but it's not required. If you go to our website, buddhadailywisdom.com, you'll see the link for classes, courses, and retreats. And then from there, you'll see the course and you can sign up from there. But if you didn't sign up, you can still come and participate. It's okay.
Okay. What will be the class looks like?
What's the class like? So what we do is we share the foundational teachings of the Buddha. So the very first day, we'll talk about the life story of the Buddha. I will teach enlightenment and what is enlightenment. I will teach you Buddhist chanting. On the second day, I will teach you the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, which is the core central teaching. I will teach you meditation in detail. On Wednesday, I will teach you what's called the 3 poisons. I'll also teach you the 5 precepts. I'll teach you walking meditation. We're going to dive into the natural law of Gama in more detail. We're going to talk about what is merit. We even have a field trip where we go out on a field trip on Friday. I invite students to go to 2 different temples, a forest temple and a city temple, and I tour you around and I teach you through the artwork, the architecture, and the various things that you'll see there. I teach you the teachings of the Buddha, like what is this thing behind me, this big wheel? What is it? You don't know right now, perhaps. But after you learn the teachings of the Buddha for 4 days, on the 5th day, we can go out and do a tour of the temples, and I can show you around and teach you the symbolism, the architecture, the artwork, and help you to understand the teachings of the Buddha through these things.
So it's from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.?
Yes, that's right.
Any break inside?
Yes, we take a break about every hour and a half, and then we take an hour and a half lunch break also. So in the morning, we take a 30-minute break typically. In the afternoon, we take an hour and a half lunch break, and then we finish at 3 o'clock.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome to come.
Interesting
Everybody,
together.
you can invite people from your hotel, from your hostel, anybody who would like to come. You guys are all welcome.
Yeah, I will check if I can change my flight maybe.
Yeah.
And I will bring some flyers to the hostel if that's okay.
Yeah, and if people are able to come for the first 2 or 3 days and they can't come the other time, that's fine too. If they would like to come just one day or half a day, they can do that as well. It's really up to the individuals. If they would like to learn, I'll be here Monday through Friday. Even tomorrow, we have a class tomorrow, which is more traditional learning. Like I said, this isn't the traditional method of learning. Okay. Tomorrow, the topic at 9 a.m. is I'm going to be teaching enlightenment. What is enlightenment? We're going to be going in detail and explaining what enlightenment is. That's what tomorrow's class is about. And you'll see even more people here tomorrow because it's more of a beginning program and there's a lot more people that tend to come on that day.
All right, super interesting, yeah. I also had a short follow-up question on the things that you taught about the animals. Mm-hmm. Is it correct that many monks eat vegetarian because of this reason?
Some monks do and some monks don't. It really depends on the person's wisdom and what they understand. Here in Thailand, they tend to be very meat-centric, but if somebody studies the teachings of the Buddha very closely, they might decide to not eat meat because you can see that the drugs and hormones and toxins that are infused into the animals, as you ingest that, it's affecting the health of your body, and this is your Dhamma. Right? You can't escape that. One of the things that some Thai people think is that whoever killed the animal, they're the ones who are experiencing the unwholesome results of their karma. But it's not actually true. It's kind of like somebody stealing a car and giving it to you. You're still going to get arrested because you're driving the car. It's the same thing as somebody else kills the animal. If you ingest the meat, you're experiencing the sickness, the bodily sickness from ingesting the meat. So people who practice the teachings very, very closely will tend to not eat meat. It's also a way of practicing loving kindness and compassion for animals. But when or if you choose to do that, it's up to you. Not everybody has to just snap their fingers and instantly practice all these things. But gradually, as you grow and you evolve, you might get to a point where you decide to not eat meat any longer. But that's a personal choice for you. It's your own development. It's your own path to enlightenment. Teachers are here to guide you and help you understand, but each individual is making decisions for themselves. And the Buddha is just explaining to you the natural laws of existence and how these things are going to affect you. And then what you choose to do is up to you, your decisions, your life, your decisions, your results.
Yeah. All right. That's interesting. And you previously also said it's the Buddhist writings, the teachings are timeless in a way. Does he also recognize in some of his teachings that there might be a lot of new learnings to come in a way that science now can point out, okay, well, indeed, if you eat meat, you're more likely to get cancer. So we have a better understanding of how our decisions might cause the effects. Is that something that he recognizes or explains?
So the path to enlightenment is the path to enlightenment. It's the same path. It's the same natural laws that he's explaining. And when he explained his teachings 2,500 years ago, he very rarely explains the results of certain things. You do see some places where he talks about, if you kill, you will experience shorter lifespan. And if you lie, these things will happen. But very rarely does he explain that. But nowadays, being 2,500 years later, we can look at his teachings and we've had enough history now that we can see the results like, wow, if we would practice that, our world would be so much better. So science is actually confirming his teachings over and over and over and over and over again. So there's no need to modify or change his teachings because once a Buddha fully awakens, they're what we call fully perfectly enlightened. They've discovered the path to enlightenment. And what they've done is they've tapped into these natural laws of existence. And those natural laws don't change throughout history. So he described them in a certain way that is timeless. People's memories and the books and things like this, people have lost in a certain degree, But if you learn with his original words and you don't believe them, you learn, reflect, and practice, you can see the truth that he explains everything perfectly. And there doesn't need to be any updates for anything. If anything, what I'm seeing is science is confirming more and more and more and more and more what he already knew 2,500 years ago.
Okay.
Without science at that time.
Yeah. So it's also quite open in a way for interpretations and new things for us to experience and understand, within his teachings.
There's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that you interpret. You're not interpreting his teachings. You're learning them. You're reflecting to independently verify, and you're practicing. So he's explaining to you the natural laws. He's not giving you rules of what you should or shouldn't do. He's just explaining to you this cause and effect and what's going on in your mind. He's essentially taking like human psychology and he's bringing it down into like a common language that anybody and everybody can understand. And you're not interpreting his words. You're learning and deeply investigating. Even like me explaining this to you, I'm just helping point out a few things to help you consider what he's teaching. But if you get more wisdom around the teachings of the Buddha, you would understand these same things that I'm sharing with you. So I'm not interpreting his teachings. I'm just sharing with you what he is teaching, and then I'm inviting you and guiding you to look for yourself, investigate and examine for yourself, so you can see the truth for yourself about what he's actually saying.
Okay, thank you very much. It's super interesting.
Mm-hmm. More questions? Yeah, go for it. You might have some more questions. So.
I have a question about she talk about the homeless. Yeah, so I thought of the situation of my country. We were born in different country because of grammar. Maybe I want to ask her the different country have different lifestyle, and in China, I think it's not normal because for me, I'm 25 years old, and for our generation, the society and the job society, there has many peer pressure, and everyone is stressful, and you said in Thailand maybe everyone will help each other. But I think in China we will help each other, but maybe it's included in we know each other, we can help each other. But if we are strangers, I just want to take care of myself. Maybe it's my opinion, but I want to know how to deal with the situation. I don't know if I...
How to deal with the situation?
Yeah.
What situation?
Yeah, it says... how to say? I want to know how to live in the society. Everyone is work hard and hard and hard, and we have a weak connection with each other because we just focus myself, because the life is hard. We just could take care of myself. I haven't any how to say I can't I don't know how to say. I just want to know how to more love with others, or how to live in the society.
Okay. I understand now. So in your society, it's like people work really, 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 really hard, and people get really stressed and have anxiety, and you're wondering, how can I be more loving in this environment? Okay. So oftentimes we're motivated to think that money and wealth and property is going to bring us happiness, but it doesn't. It brings you temporary happiness, where you get a brand new car and you feel happy for a few weeks or a few months, but then it fades away. Or you get a brand new job and you feel happy for a period of time, but then it fades away. Or you get a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, or more money, and you feel happy for a temporary period, but then it fades away. This is something that you learn as part of the teachings of the Buddha, why this is occurring. And this is the whole problem, is that the unenlightened mind is basing its inner feelings on some condition. If I get a brand new car, I'll feel happy. But now this happiness is not permanent because the car is not permanent. Or if I get a raise at work, if I go from $30,000 a year to $50,000 a year, I will be happy. And now you're happy for a temporary period, but because your happiness is based on the condition of $50,000, that $50,000 is not permanent. And now as your salary goes up and down and up and down, same thing with your emotions and your feelings, they go up and down and up and down. So this whole idea of working hard working, it actually doesn't produce a peaceful life and a peaceful way of being. So that's why, like here in Thailand, you'll see that people work, but they also know how to rest and relax and spend time with their families and joke and laugh and have fun also, right? So they have this more balanced life. So to get to love in your life, you need to understand what true love is, and you need to be able to practice true love. The opposite of love is anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, irritation, annoyance, dislike. This is the opposite of love. So what we use in order to cultivate love and kindness in the mind is there's a meditation called loving kindness meditation. I think you were here the other day when I was teaching it. So you practice this meditation to transform your mind, to become more loving and kind, and then you go out into the world using the Eightfold Path, which is something I'm going to be teaching next week in our course, where you learn about how to be more loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And now when you're more loving and kind, because you've trained your mind to do that, you'll find more love and kindness coming back to you. But as long as you don't understand how to be loving and kind, you're not putting out love, so love isn't going to come back to you. We oftentimes have something called craving, desire, attachment in the unenlightened mind that is masquerading as love. I'll give you an example. Like say a parent has a child and they're trying to force their child to do something specific. They're putting their expectations on their child. They might think that this is because of their love. They really want their child to be a doctor or a lawyer or something else, right? And they're trying to control their child and force their child to study at school and do certain things. And they think that this is because of their love. But that's not actually the love. This is the craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, the wanting things. And now if your child does what you want, you're happy. But if your child doesn't do what you want, you get angry or sad or frustrated. But this is not love. This is craving, desire, attachment. We might call it conditional love, but there's no such thing as conditional love. But you might think of it as that. Like if this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, and this condition is met, I will love you. But if you stop doing these things, you don't meet my conditions anymore, I don't love you. That's not love. We call it love in the unenlightened state. You might meet a partner, like a man or a woman, and you might say, after knowing them for a month or two, you might get to a point where you say, I fell in love with you. I've fallen in love with you. Well, in reality, what's happened is they've met certain conditions, and since they're meeting these expectations, you now say that I love you. But then as time goes on and they don't meet your expectations anymore, you say, I don't love you anymore. I've fallen out of love with you. You haven't really fallen in love and out of love. You've actually fallen into craving and out of craving. You craved and long and attached to this person, wanting them to be a certain way. And as long as they're the way you want them to be, you will be with them in a relationship. But when they stop doing what you want them to do, you don't want to be in a relationship with them anymore. This isn't actually love. What love is unconditional love. I love you regardless of what you do. So that's why you can love everybody in the world. I can love you. Love means I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. I have active goodwill towards you without judging. So I can see that there's a person here and I have love for this being. I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. I have active goodwill for you. And that's why I'm willing to share these teachings at no cost and help you, because I would like to see you be well, right? And let's just say tomorrow, I know you won't do this, but let's just say tomorrow you go out and murder somebody, right? I still love you. I disagree with the decision that you made, but that's the decision you made. That's not who you are. That decision isn't you. That's just a decision that you made. It's an unwise decision, and you will experience that karma, that unwholesome result. But I can still love you, because love is I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. If in your mind, if somebody thinks that love is you do what I want and I will love you, you stop doing what I want and I don't love you anymore, that's not love. That's craving, desire, attachment. That's expectations. That's wants. So unconditional love is you didn't have to earn my love. So there's nothing you can do for me to fall out of love with you. I'll just always love you regardless, because it's unconditional. With conditional love, even though it's not truly love, this has to be true, 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 then I will love you. But when all of that's not true, then I don't love you anymore. That's not true love. True love is, I love you the way you are. And I realize I'm going to disagree with some of your decisions, but that's okay, because we're never going to agree 100% on everything. It's impossible. This is never going to occur where we agree on every single thing. So if somebody's love is contingent on I have to agree with you about everything, that's not actual love. So you can get to unconditional love by practicing loving kindness meditation and transforming your mind away from anger, hatred, and ill will. And then you can start practicing through your intention, speech, and actions love, and then you will see more and more love coming back to you. But right now you live in a society, it sounds like, that is go, 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 lots of work, lots of stress and anxiety, because they don't have these teachings that they understand. So you can come to a place like Thailand, you can learn about these teachings, and then even you go back into the society that you live in, you can choose to function differently. Even though other people are functioning in the way that you're describing, you don't have to function that way. You can choose something different for yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe the first step is I learn to give unconditional life to everyone. Yeah.
So learning the Eightfold Path is the core central teaching. That's so important. You haven't learned that yet, even though you've been coming here a few times. You haven't been in a class where I've taught that yet. But when you learn the Eightfold Path as a core central teaching, that builds up your life practice. And then if you continue learning, in this first book, chapter 15, I teach true love. Love without attachment, learning and understanding how to love. You may not have been in a relationship that has true love. I'm sure people love you, like your parents, they love you, but they probably have certain cravings in their mind that is polluting their love. So they have this unconditional love in there. They love you regardless of what you do, but they also probably have certain cravings, certain things they want from you perhaps. When they get that craving, desire, attachment out of the way, their true love can shine through more and more. But oftentimes we don't know how to have true love, because in the unenlightened state, we lack wisdom. So you and the people around you probably have never been in a relationship where nobody wants something from you. Your relationship with your Buddhist teacher might be the very first time you've ever been in a relationship where I don't want anything from you. I'm only interested in seeing you be well. I have a genuine interest in seeing you be well. I don't want anything from you. So when you experience what this is like and you can feel that and experience that, then you can be more able to replicate that in your life among your parents and your friends and if you have a life partner or something like this. But until you've experienced true love and you can get in touch with what it is, you'll have trouble practicing it. So part of what you're doing by coming to the temple is you need to learn the core central teaching of the Eightfold Path. And then once you get that down, then you need to learn true love and what that is and how to practice that. And that takes time for you to gradually learn those things.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I think I'll keep them for tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, keep them for tomorrow. Okay. So what I'll do then is I'll just end class here by thanking you guys and thanking everybody online for attending. I appreciate that you guys decided that today's a day you would like to learn the teachings of the Buddha. You're always welcome to come here and learn Sunday, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. And then sometimes we have courses and retreats that you can get access to either here at the temple, and we live stream some of our courses and retreats as well. Our website has everything on there. If you go to our website, you'll see that it has all the details of all our various classes and courses and stuff like this. As you guys have questions, feel free to reach out and let me know. So perhaps I'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee Kap. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.